Okay, so this topic that I wanted to talk about today is going to be slightly similar to topics I've talked about in the last week or so. I've talked about is it possible to be a feminist and a trophy wife? I've talked about toxic gender norms, and I've talked about, what's it like being raised in a matriarchy and that sort of thing. And today I wanted to talk a little bit more about feminism and being a feminist, but I also want to talk about how cultures sort of clash. And I remember when I studied anthropology, they talked about how in certain Chinese villages and then in certain Southeast Asian villages, they would be a matriarchy. And the main difference between a matriarchy versus a patriarchy is that in a patriarchy, the head of the household is the elder man. Whereas in a matriarchy, the head of the household is the elder woman, elder lady. And I talked a little bit about this in one of my other videos, about these sort of clash of cultures, where my dad's family was very much a patriarchy, whereas my mom's family was very much a matriarchy. And so the way that sort of looked like me as a kid, being raised in that household with sort of blended cultures, is that my mom was the primary breadwinner. My mom always made the most money, and my dad was a stay-at-home dad after he quit his job due to stress-related reasons. And it was sort of weird being in a blended household with the sort of my mom coming from the matriarchal background and my dad coming from the patriarchal background. In my dad's family, it was a huge family. They had 9 kids, 6 with with my grandma, and then 3 with another person. And my grandpa did cheat on my grandma, and that was super common knowledge. And I view that as a super common thing in a patriarchal construct. The whole having side chicks. My grandpa definitely had a side chick, and he had children out of wedlock with her. And my mom's family is from Cambodia. They were from China originally, but they relocated to Cambodia. And in Cambodia, there was basically a communist takeover, the Khmer Rouge, Khmer space Rouge, so that's Khmer space Rouge. Basically, it was a communist party that wanted to overthrow the current society, and they went about doing this through basically finding all of the educated elites in the Cambodian society and killing them off straight off. And a good deal of my mom's family were very educated. Well, it was sort of weird. I should explain how my mom's family ended up being a matriarchy, or my mom sort of became raised in a matriarchy. Because my grandma on my mom's side, earlier I was talking about my dad's side when I talked about grandma and grandpa, but now I'm talking about my mom's side. On my mom's side, basically, my grandpa was really well educated. He was a professor, he taught math, whereas my grandma was just basically a stay-at-home wife. But then once the Khmer Rouge started taking over the country, he was killed, just point blank at gunpoint, that was it. And so my grandma, the stay-at-home housewife, was left to sort of raise all of these kids on her own. And having that be the sort of background where my mom was raised from a very young age without a dad, my mom told us every day as a kid, learn how to take care of yourself, be a strong, independent woman, know how to take care of yourself without a man. And so it sort of kind of put this matriarchal construct in our heads where, the woman is supposed to take care of the household, the woman's supposed to hold down the fort, things like that. And when I look at my sister's marriage, in her marriage, my sister makes more money than her husband. That may have changed because she started taking more time off. But my sister's sort of the head of the household. And in my parents' family, my mom is sort of the head of the household. With the sort of weirdness of my mom still asks my dad for permission to do things, which I think is sort of weird. It could just be a marriage thing, but I think it's sort of weird. And the reason why I like talking about feminism or being a feminist or how our society is mostly a patriarchy is because I like people to frame their biases as just that, as subconscious biases. Because once you become aware of them, you're able to sort of see things from a bit of a different perspective and understand how the way that you view the world is based off of your upbringing. And I think a lot of people don't take the time to self-reflect or introspect to get to that point. Some people do, some people don't. My voice still sounds funny because I'm still kind of sick. My cold's getting better though. Less mucus, so I'm getting better. But in one of my previous videos, oh, that's my dog. Okay, I'm gonna show you real quick. It's Dookie on a Lady, my other dog, which I don't think she's made an appearance on this channel. She actually died yesterday. Lady and Duke, they're from the same litter, and they are both 11 years old. Lady died of like a kidney problem. So she died and she was cremated yesterday. It's sort of awkward, but to talk, whatever, I'm just not gonna worry about it. And basically in our society, I don't like that women are taught to believe that everything is based off of appearance, everything, and that society is super shallow. And the reason why I don't like that is, well, someone could obviously point out, they're like, well, you're Asian, and because you're Asian, you came from the background of believing that, you know, it means everything to be smart. It means everything to be, you know, it means everything to be smart, and it means everything to be, like, intelligent. And that's partially true, because I did come from an Asian background, so that's sort of where my perspective is on things. Whereas it wasn't until way later on in life, like way beyond childhood, way beyond teenage years, way beyond early adulthood, that I started to see how shallow a good deal of society is. When I say shallow, I mean in the sense of people will put so much emphasis on appearance that they completely overlook things like personality or intelligence or humor or charisma or character, you know, being a good person, being ethical, being moral. And I think for me, the thing that I put the most emphasis on is character, being good, being moral, being ethical. And when you're talking about someone being shallow means an emphasis on appearances and an emphasis on money. And I think the thing that people really, really overestimate is how much that matters. You know, a lot of people think that, oh God, that's our neighbor's bird. A lot of people think that if they have the most money in the world, they're going to be the happiest. And for a long time, I thought that the only way that I would be happy is if I lived this extraordinary life. For a long period of time, I thought that the only way that I would be happy is if I lived this extremely, extremely out there life. And there's a lot of ways in which I've lived an out there life. Like, I've gone on road trips. I've lived in my van while I've been on these road trips for like 4 months at a time, and I'd go rock climbing like along the Pacific coast. Well, not the Pacific coast, but like the Pacific Standard Time Zone. And it would be nice. It'd be fun. And I'd just go rock climbing and sleep in my car and meet random people and go rock climbing and sleep in my car and go rock climbing and sleep in my car. And it's the sort of thing where a lot of people attach their happiness to money. Because a lot of people attach their happiness to money, they become very greedy. They become super, super greedy because they attach their happiness to money. And there was like a level of like, I need to pay my basic needs, like pay for food, pay for shelter, you know, pay for like utilities, things like that. And there was like the level of greed. And I think something I find frustrating is that people are so unaware of how greedy they are and how easily they're bought out by shallow things like money, or how easily they're manipulated by an attractive person. And what I don't think people realize is that there's so much more to life than appearances and wealth. And I think that one of the most important things in life is character, in terms of being a good person. Being a good person, having morals, having ethics, you know, being kind, being altruistic without expecting anything in return. And what I've noticed about society is that societies become increasingly and increasingly more transactional, which means transactional relationships, which is I use you, you use me. When you have a society filled with transactional relationships with like I use you, you use me, you're basically in a situation where no one's loyal to each other. People are loyal to the money. And, you know, there are people that I don't talk to anymore, and there are people that I still talk to. And people are like, well, does that mean you have to be close to everyone you were always close to? And the answer is no. And what I've noticed with myself is that the people that I'm still close to, I've cut everyone out of my life, to be honest. And I think I've cut so many people out of my life just because I've noticed that they're really toxic or unhealthy relationships. And being raised in a very abusive and toxic family made all of that seem normal to me. And the thing is, something seems normal to you because you're familiar with it. And when I started to recognize that the things that seemed normal to me, I was familiar with because of my abusive and toxic background, I started to realize that if I wanted to really have friends and relationships that were very, very emotionally healthy for me, very positive, very uplifting, very empowering, that I would need to be in a position where I could recognize intuitively the difference between healthy relationships and unhealthy toxic relationships. And part of that would be cutting a lot of people out of my life because they fit the old mold of what a relationship should be like or what a friendship should be like. Very, very imbalanced, very abusive, very jealous and petty, and things like that. And so this kind of touched on a lot of topics. I wanted to talk about feminism a little bit. I wanted to talk about sort of cultures colliding with my mom and my dad's family. And I also wanted to talk about how if a society wasn't based off of shallow values like money and appearance, what would it look like? And I don't know. Because in our society, most of it's based off of appearance and money. People don't seem to care as much these days if you're a good person. And I think something that I could be bitter about, or I could be angry about, but I'm not bitter about, and I'm not angry about, is that a lot of times I felt taken advantage of. And a lot of times I felt taken advantage of because I would just be a good person and I would help people out without expecting anything or without needing anything. And then later on, it just, when I would be in a tough situation, no one would come and help me. And I think knowing that, it sort of pisses me off. It actually doesn't piss me off, it just makes me not want to associate with those kinds of people. And I think in healthy dynamics, there's this sort of balance of give and take. And the balance of give and take is, it balances out over time. How much someone takes from a relationship and how much someone gives to a relationship. But if it doesn't balance out, it's an unhealthy relationship. And I think people underestimate how many times they're in toxic relationships. And there are so many people who I see compulsively lie and abuse and cheat and steal. And here's the thing, I learned this about myself. I don't want to become wealthy if it means I have to lie, cheat, or steal, or become corrupt. And something else I learned about myself, I don't want to become famous or powerful or wealthy if it means I have to lie, cheat, or steal, or become corrupt and evil. And I would choose an ordinary life over an extraordinary life if it meant I was always a good person. And I think that's something that I decided about myself a while back. Okay, so that's the end of today's video. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.